the most outdated products and techniques in detailing.
Hi, I'm Yvan.
I'm Nick.
And this is the DIY Detail Podcast. Today we're going to go back to my start and look at some products and techniques that you may want to move past.
Well, they're still being used in some places, Yvan. That's why we had to tell the people about this.
Yeah, they're still being used. They are still being sold, the products, and there are better ways of doing things. So the first one, and I can still see the image, in my brain, my uncle's garage, right by the garage door, hanging on a nail, the Shammy, that old piece of leather. And that old piece of leather was there to dry the car. The Shammy has since been surpassed many, many times, and it's been surpassed by things like, we'll go a little farther back, not as far back as the Shammy, but at one point after the Shammy was sort of done and over with, we had the synthetic Shammies, the ShamWows of this world that are unfortunately still available, and then we had cotton diapers. Then we came into microfiber towels. So if you're drying your car, the Shammy is probably the oldest thing you can use, and a great way of scratching the car. They worked. They had to be wet. They had to be wrung out, and then you drag it across, and you could feel the drag. You're not just. It's not like the microfiber towel that we're throwing and pulling off, and it's a beautiful dry surface. No, it would leave a film. So the Shammy, if you have one, it's a great museum piece. That's where it should go. It shouldn't touch your car.
But there had to have been a time where the Shammy felt like evolution in a positive way. Like, people weren't not people then. Just because things happen in the past, we often, put this lens on it like, oh, that was different back then. No, people were still smart and had passion and ambition. People were still people back then. All right, this wasn't that long ago. So, but I can't imagine a time when a Shammy was safe. So what was the thought process when you watched how it worked and you're like, this is good?
Because it was the best thing available at the time, and things change. Tires from the 60s were not comfortable. They were not safe compared to tires today. So there's a lot of things that change in the industry, and in every industry. We get better. Look at if you have an air conditioner, we started out with very, very toxic items in our refrigerators. Back in the 30s, they even had refrigerators that the gas that was in it, if it leaked out, it would kill you. And that's not a good thing. So, luckily, that gas went away very quickly. But these are all things that we need to consider that, yes, in time, people are always evolving. We're trying to get better. That is part of the human condition, is trying to improve not only for us, but for our kids and for the future generations. So yes, the Shammy back in the 60s, 70s, maybe the 80s was an okay thing. And probably, in its day was the thing, but we've gone way, way past that. So just because it worked well in the past doesn't mean it was safe, doesn't mean it was good. It just means it was the only thing they had.
Well, we have the drying blanket, which may or may not be out of stock at the time you're watching this. As of our recording of the podcast, the drying blanket is out of stock. But we have the Diva drying towel from our friends at the House of Rags, and that's a fantastic way to dry your paint as well. So the evolution in drying towels, Yvan, has been robust. I don't think we're going to look back to 2025 and be like, I can't believe they were using that to dry the paint. I mean, they work great.
Right. They work great. And yes, maybe in 10 years from now, we'll look back and say, oh, microfiber is so passé, and something else will have come up. So the R&D process is always working. And actually, we have a towel in R&D right now that contains no plastic, which microfiber towels are made of plastic. So there are things that are, there's always evolution in the industry. The other thing, after the Shammy sort of went away, we got the drying blade. And this is a silicone blade that was used for drying paint. Now, if you're drying windows with it, great. If you're doing the side of a side scraper or a skyscraper and you're cleaning the windows there, excellent. For your car, not so good. So the silicone blade by itself isn't dangerous. the dust in the air is what's dangerous. So you've got something that's relatively hard dragging across the paint, somewhat like the chamois, but at the same time, that hardness going across the paint, if it encounters a speck of dust or a little bit of grit that you left behind, it's just going to drag it in whatever line you're going with that water blade or that silicone blade.
Well, it's so easy to think that this is common sense, but as I got into detailing back in 2016, 2017, I went to my local auto parts store and I picked a bunch of items up, and one of them was the blade. It just, I'd seen it being used before to dry cars and windows. It just seemed like a common sense thing that I would get.
Yeah. And I've had them as well. And just about every detailer my age has at least had 5 of them. But at the same time, once you realize what it's doing and that there are better options, again, there are better options that are on the market today. So the older things like that, just because we've seen them used doesn't mean they were meant to be used, or it doesn't mean they should be used. Another item is the dusters. And if your car has a little bit of dust on it, you use this thing. It's red. It's got a beige handle. I won't name the name, but anyways, everyone knows what I'm talking
Big
about.
state on the West
You go
Coast.
over your car and yeah, exactly. But these products, according to their own marketing, the dirtier it gets, the better it works.
What?
I have a problem with that. Yes, the dirtier it
That
gets,
makes
the
no
better it
sense.
works. That is their marketing. And you'll open the trunk of an older car that's going to car shows on the weekends, or unfortunately a lot of Corvettes. You'll open the trunk and you'll find it there. If you, as a professional detailer, find one of those in a customer's car, take it out, put it in a bag, and then give it back to the customer and say, please don't use this on your car, and explain to them why. And the why is very simple. It is simply dragging the dirt around on the car. And that dust, even though we don't see it, it is very abrasive. And when you're dragging that across the paint, sure, it's lifting some of the dust off, but it's also, as I say, dragging some of that dust and dirt along the car. And we don't know what's on the car. So a good wet wash is the way to do it.
What about the devil's advocate where we don't advocate for trying to remove too much clear coat because we have a finite amount of clear coat and we just want people to be happy with a nice deep clean and a one-step polish most times? We advocate for these shiny scratches. So
Yes.
what's wrong with inflicting a few scratches along the way with the duster, Ivan? If we're getting a shiny paint after, the car was clean, now it got dusty, we just want to dust her off. What's another couple scratches?
Another couple scratches adds to another couple scratches and another couple scratches, and eventually you get a surface that looks really bad. And then you'll want or need to polish it to get it back to that shiny surface. So yes, shiny scratches are not a bad thing, but too many shiny scratches become a bad thing. So we don't want to, if we can prevent inflicting damage to the vehicle, then we prevent inflicting damage. Like I say, you can use a chamois, you can use the duster. They're going to damage your paint. Why would you willingly use something that damages your paint?
The older I get, the more profound the statement is that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, or whatever.
Yes.
It's just that it's so much easier in small, incremental, very relatively manageable doses on the front end to prevent something versus trying to save it at the end. So we prevent the scratches on the front end with good solid wash technique. We don't have to come in and try to wet sand and compound and polish paint that doesn't have that much clear coat to begin with. So I get what you're saying. Let's try to prevent scratch infliction, and then we won't have to worry about removing a ton of scratches later when it's not only difficult to do but also dangerous.
Right. Now, another technique that has thankfully gone by the wayside, and that is the 2-bucket method. I've never understood the reasoning behind the 2-bucket method from a logical, scientific point. It just doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is the prep involved in it. So a lot of people, all they would do is simply foam on the soap to the car, and then from there, start washing. The grit is still on the vehicle. And then they're moving the grit around with their wash mitt. And we'll get to an older wash mitt here in a second. But they move it around with their wash mitt, then dunk it in a bucket of just water. And water really does nothing to emulsify dirt and break it down. Then they take it from that. Hopefully, the thought was to have all the dirt now off the mitt. Then they go back into their soapy water. Then they go back onto the car that has the soap on it. They're simply moving grit around. They're not removing it from the surface. The method we teach is chemical rinse chemical, or foam rinse foam. So we'll stick with soap here. You're using soap, you foam on the soap, let it dwell, let it do its job, and then you rinse it off. When you're rinsing it off, it's also taking with it a good percentage of that grit that can damage your paint. Now, it is leaving behind some traffic film. That's why we have the contact wash. Then from there, you foam a second time, or apply rinseless wash a second time, whatever you want to do. Then from there, you're doing your contact wash. Now you've removed the grit from the surface. You have lots of lubrication on the surface, and you're going back to your bucket, and you don't need a second bucket, which is wasting time, wasting water, and really isn't that efficient.
If you do the foam rinse foam method, and then you want to use the 2 buckets, you can. We're not telling you not to do it. If you like a little bit extra time with your wash, if you feel like I'm going to dunk it in the water first, and then I'm going to put it in my soapy wash bucket, and then I'm going to clean. If you want to do that, it's fine. It's just not necessary.
Now, speaking of the 2-bucket wash method, the wool wash mitt.
Oh, can I reflect
now,
on a little bit of our history before we talk about the wool wash mitt?
Yeah. Go
because
ahead.
I looked at our old shorts from like a couple years ago. Because I always say, Ivan, did we invent the foam rinse foam method? And you're like, no, it's been around for a while. But I think we coined it. And now I'm going to say this because one of the first shorts I titled when we talked about this sandwiching in between the 2 foams, the rinse, I called it the 2 foam method. And I'm like, have you heard of the 2 foam method? I typed that up and I made that a short title. And it's like, we don't call it the 2 foam method anymore. So I think us coming to the title of the foam rinse foam has really helped clarify for people a technique that admittedly has been around for a while. Anyway, that's all I want to say.
So definitely, we tried to make it as popular as we can because it is in current day technology. So we're recording this in 2025. If you're watching this in 2035, you may be going, look at those idiots. No one does that anymore.
Robots wash cars now.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully not. Like, washing a car is fun. Don't leave the fun to the robots. Let them do the boring, mundane jobs. Wash your car yourself. It's a lot of fun. But
I think as we get more into technology and AI, people are going to even gravitate more and more toward what is real and what is with their hands. And part of that is going to be washing their cars. I don't know. I could be wrong. Do you have any thoughts on the future, Ivan?
I hope that is the future. I reflect back on my past, and the Saturday mornings, the dads would be out there washing the cars in the driveway. We're trying to bring that back. We're trying to bring that fun back, and out there with the kids. I remember washing the car Saturday morning with my father. It was pretty much every Saturday morning, as long as it was warm enough outside, because we were in Canada. So it was in the winter, not necessarily, but during the summer. Every summer, Saturday, out there washing the car, waxing it once in a while, which was more of a chore. But thankfully, we have ceramics today. Wax is good, but if you have your choice between installing a ceramic coating, installing a wax, I think, Nick, which would you choose?
Wax is hard to install. We actually have a wax. I know that we're kind of going everywhere, but would you say that wax is an outdated detailing product?
No, wax still has its place. The old paste waxes of yore, they might be a little outdated because of the technique and the chemicals in them. But today's modern waxes are, first of all, a lot easier to install. You thought, when Nick first installed our wax, that was his first experience with using a wax. And he put it on just a smidge too thick. And that smidge too thick made it very difficult to remove. So with that, the waxes of my youth, even if you put them on as thin as possible, they were still difficult to remove. So we've really advanced the technology in waxes. They're a lot easier to work with today, but still a wax is a wax. So it's not a long-lasting product. It will give you a certain beauty, a certain look to the paint that can't be replicated, but at the same time,
it can't be
more work
replicated.
involved.
I will tell you, it is a unique look, and that's where it's like, you may want to master your wax game just because you're the kind of person who wants to do hard things well. You might be the kind of person who learns the rotary even though you like the DA because you want to know how to use all the tools in the arsenal, and then you find out actually the rotary is easier. But if you're like me, we're detailers. We all, in some ways, are like, You want to know how to apply a wax. You want to see what it's all about if you've
Yeah.
never tried one before. It's more difficult to remove. It's more of a bear to apply, but the temporary filling of the scratches and the glow is unlike anything I've ever seen, Ivan.
Yeah, exactly. And so wax, yes, some people say wax is dead or wax is an outdated product. It is not. The waxes of my youth from 50, 60 years ago, yeah, not the greatest. I wouldn't use those today. But the waxes that we have available to us today make waxing enjoyable again. So it's still, wax is still a pertinent thing in our industry. It's just not the best. If you're a professional detailer, wax may not be in your repertoire because it's longer to use than a sealant. It doesn't last as long as a sealant. It doesn't beat as well as a sealant. There are some downsides to a wax, but there are some good upsides, and you have to weigh which one you're looking for. And yes, you can use a wax on top of a coating. That is something that a lot of people have this misconception that, oh, you can't use a wax on top of a coating. You can't use a cleaner wax that contains abrasives, but a wax with no abrasives can be used on top of a coating.
For example, our show-winning wax, if you part next to sprinklers, could help mitigate against water spot accumulation. Is that right?
Yeah, it sure can, because the wax sheds and it sheds the minerals at the same time. Now, back to our subject at hand, though.
Wool wash mitt. I interrupted you about 5 minutes ago when I went on my foam coinage method term. All right, let's talk about the wool wash mitt. I don't even think I ever used one of these.
No, so the wool wash mitt, the precursor to the microfiber wash mitt, and it is something that worked, but again, it got really odd feeling in a lot of soaps. It felt almost greasy at some points, and I remember hand car washes back in the 70s and 80s that for an extra fee, they would use a brand new wash mitt on your car. So they would pull it out of the package in front of you, put it in their bucket, and start washing your car that way. Because that was a premium luxury option to have a fresh wash mitt every time.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So the wool wash mitts, they work. They are not the greatest at protecting your paint. The wash pads, the thicker microfiber ones, not the chenille ones. I'm not a fan of the chenille ones, but the ones that have the long fibers on them, like ours, that helps the dirt to go somewhere. And it moves up inside the pad when you put it back in your soap. Hopefully it releases as much of it. And that's why we have a sponge. So the Legacy sponge, when you put it back in the soap, it actually does release everything from the sponge. So your sponge comes out clean. So the next time you're going onto your paint, it's clean again. But the wool wash mitt didn't release dirt very well at all, or not at all, but it didn't release it well. And the road film or the traffic film that we're taking off the paint would literally accumulate in that wool wash mitt. And by the end of the car, it would feel greasy.
Sounds like an interesting wash experience, Ivan. I'm glad we moved past that.
But you can still buy them today.
Yes, you can. You can buy all these today, and the companies that sell them will gladly take your money.
Yeah.
I have one that's on the edge of, is it outdated? Is it still relevant? Should you be using it versus, are they being used? And it's the clay bar, Ivan LaCroix. The clay bar.
Yeah, so the clay bar, the one that you need, and, you do a little section, you look at it, it gets a little dirty, you need it again.
That's KNEAD, right? Kneading with your hands. Yep.
Yeah, like dough.
Yep.
So those are, clay bars have a job. They have a specific job, that is to decontaminate paint. Unfortunately, they contain abrasives. So every time you use a clay bar, you are damaging your paint. Now, you're looking at it from a microscopic level, you'll see all the scratches. Some paints, very soft paint, it will look like you turned a black paint to gray. It mars up so much. On some harder paints, you may or may not see any marring. But the clay bar takes a lot of time, takes effort to use, isn't very efficient, and isn't cost effective either. People go, oh yeah, but clay towel is a lot more expensive than a clay bar. Yes, but a perforated synthetic decontamination towel is going to last you for hundreds of cars, whereas a clay bar, if you get 5 to 10 cars out of it, you're very good and lucky. So it has its place, but not as often as it should be.
One underlooked aspect of all this is how much labor it is on your shoulder to clay a car with a clay bar. I think of it almost like a kid at the beach with a little sand shovel making sand castles versus like a big shovel, and you try to shovel your driveway, and you're using either this thing or
Yes.
like once you start using our decon towel, you fold it into fours, no pressure. You make sure you go over each section until you stop feeling anything rough or hearing anything that sounds kind of scratchy. You redunk it in your bucket after each 4 sections has been used. You just fold it back up again, keep using it. It's so much easier to use, but I did used to use a clay bar, and I went back to the clay bar just to try it recently. Ivan, it was overwhelmingly difficult compared to our decon towel and the way that we set up our process.
Yeah. No, so the clay bar has its place for heavy contamination,
Yeah.
but other than that, it shouldn't be used on a regular basis.
We've actually done a video, I'll put it in the description below, where we use a razor blade to shave off heavy overspray. And it might seem intimidating to the average person out there who doesn't have a lot of experience on paint. However, I really liked that method. But, if you go too aggressive with it, you may need to polish it after. So if it's done well, it actually could make unnecessary having that clay bar. What do you think about the razor blade method?
Oh, definitely. The razor blade method is what I've been using for decades. It's a standard in the body shop industry, in the overspray abatement industry, because it actually is an industry. So the people that go around doing overspray removal, they use razor blades. Now, one thing I'd like to see go away is the plastic razor blade. The plastic razor blade, for me, is inefficient, and it's an easy way of scratching your paint because you think you've got something soft in your hand, or softer. You have a plastic razor blade, and people put way too much pressure and way too much, effort behind them, and that's what scratches the paint. So if you're trying to remove something, a properly prepped steel razor blade will be safer, easier, and faster than a plastic razor blade.
And again, if you want to understand how that's safe and how that works, we have a whole video about it. Put that in the description below. Ivan, we're not talking about the other kind of bra here. We're talking about bras on vehicles. When you first said that, I'm like, what are we talking about, bras? But bras are outdated, Ivan.
Yeah.
I'll let you take it from here.
So back in the 80s, it was a really cool thing to have a bra in your car. And this was a black vinyl piece that clipped on with straps and held on. That was to protect the front end of your car. People that put bras on their cars and then after a year remove the bra realize that the bra did more damage than anything else because it's always moving around a little bit. It's always scratching the paint. And to use a bra, ideally, if you follow the instructions that came with them, because I had one on my 84 Camaro back in 84 when they were popular.
I believe it.
Yeah. But you had to wash the surface first, make sure the bra was perfectly clean, then put the bra on, which was not always an easy task. Then from there, once a week goes by, you have to take it off, vacuum the backside of the bra, clean the car, put it back on. A lot of people just left them there, and that's where stuff accumulated behind the bra and eventually scratched the paint and marred it, and it looked horrible. Now that's been replaced by PPF, and PPF does a much better job than the clear bra. It doesn't look period correct, obviously, but back in the 80s, the bra was the thing to have, and it had a certain look, like louvers on the back of the car. Louvers were another thing that we put on the back windows of our Camaros and Mustangs back in the day that gave them a sportier look. But cleaning that back window was a real pain after that because you'd have to remove it, which wasn't easy. So that being said, the bras for cars, the name that that a lot of people will use for PPF is an indication of that. They call it a clear bra.
Oh, because it was okay. And then clear bra kind of became the industry name for it for a while. I feel like PPF has become the dominant term again. But clear bra was the brand early on that everyone thought of when they thought of PPF.
Well, it wasn't a brand. It was actually just a term, like paint protection
I thought clear
film.
bra was like
so
Kleenex.
People were saying, no. People would say we 3M in the front of our car. That was the name brand. But, Clear Bra in itself was just a generic term. The like facial tissue as opposed to Kleenex.
Got it.
But the bras that were popular in the 80s, you still see them on some cars. They're still available too, which is really odd to me. But, for someone going on a long trip, it might, and they're worried about stone chips, it might have something there. But at the same time, get Clear Bra or, get PPF. The other thing about PPF, one thing that I'm seeing the industry going away from, which I'm very thankful for, is partial PPF. If you're going to put PPF on your hood, do the whole hood. Don't have the line in the middle of the hood that accumulates dirt and starts looking like crap. And when you pull that protection off, your paint looks very different where it was protected and where it wasn't. So you have to put more on. And PPF isn't a lifetime thing. It's not going to last the lifetime of the vehicle. It's something that you should consider replacing every 5 to 8 years, depending on where you are.
That sounds expensive. And then removing PPF is no joke either, because not all PPF is created equal, and you got to use the steamer, and you don't want to pull off the clear coat underneath it. People don't really think about what's going to happen in 5 years after they apply the Clear Bra, or I mean the PPF, Ivan. I think I still would get PPF if I got a brand new ride, and then ceramic coat over it.
Yeah, 100%. Now, another technique that should go away, but some people still use, is using newsprint to clean windows.
Come on, Ivan. No one's doing that anymore. No one's doing that anymore.
Yes, they are.
What?
Yes, they are. I still see people recommending newsprint for cleaning windows. Now, when we had oil-based or solvent-based inks, that was actually a good way of cleaning windows. But now that we have the water-based inks, it's not a good way of cleaning windows. It's not going to do what those solvent-based inks were doing for your window. So it's an old technique. Your grandmother or your grandfather might have used it. But in today's world, today's newsprint can't do the job that the old newsprint used to do. So we're at a point where the old stuff was better for one thing. The old newsprint was very horrible for the environment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But at cleaning windows, it actually was good. Today's newsprint, and Nick, you made it.
Was it good at the initial pass because it had something in it that activated whatever? But it probably was streaky at the end, or was it good for the front and the back end of the window cleaning?
For both. It actually was a good way of cleaning windows, but that was with solvent-based inks, and we haven't had solvent-based inks in a long time. So, Nick, you may have never experienced a solvent-based ink cleaning a window since you started in 2017. So there's a good chance you never experienced that. And that's why people my age still look back a little fondly on the crumpled newspaper for cleaning windows, but it's not, in today's world, it can't be done. Or it can be done, but you're not going to get good results like we used to get back in the day.
You know what I would love, Ivan? If folks would put in the comments below what other outdated detailing products and techniques come to mind, because there's got to be more that we haven't mentioned.
Oh, I'm sure well, I know there's a lot more, but we've taken up enough of your time. And at the same time, subscribe, because you'll learn new techniques from us. We're always changing. We're always evolving. We're always trying to make detailing easier, simpler, safer, and faster. Or obviously more enjoyable too. But with that, our techniques that we started with the channel 3 years ago, or almost 3 years ago now, we've changed some of our techniques too. And that is because of readers' comments. That is because of research and development. That is because of the community that we're in. And that community involves all the people watching these videos. But we also have a great Facebook community, 57,000 members in our Facebook group that are there to help. And they're there as a community. And it's a really fun group to be in. People encourage each other, they help each other, and if someone is putting someone down, that person tends to disappear.
Oh, absolutely. We've talked a lot about the past, Ivan, and it sounds very futuristic, a hybrid wash.
Yes, definitely.
If folks want to know more about what a hybrid wash is, I think they could find that video right here.
Right there.